Hello, I'm Frances Mae Ramos. I am an artist from Metro Manila, Philippines. And it's not a big story how I got into painting. I just remember being young. During my childhood days, art was something very encouraged in our household. And of course, when I went to school, I would enjoy doing my homework with artwork in it, something like that, until my parents picked up on this affinity for the arts. And they would enroll me in summer classes until I started exploring different mediums like oil. Watercolor would come later on. It's all schooling in technique in the first stages. And then now that I'm an adult artist, I've been exploring my style on my own. Something that drives me is the compliments I receive for my works of art. You know, since I was young, I guess up until adolescence, I found that people appreciated my art, or at least at that time, it was just a skill that I suppose people were amazed by. It felt like something I was good at, so I decided, when I was in college, in my adult years, to really play to my strengths. And if it was something I could do, then, um, I could make a life out of it. Well, at first I was attracted by classic styles, very realistic, sometimes even hyper realistic, because it takes real skill to do that. And when I first had during my first brushes with art workshops, instructors and professors would always say that you need to be schooled in the classical styles first. That is figurative. You learn figurative painting and sketching before going abstract or before stylizing your work. And I did follow that to a certain extent. But then over the years, like especially in my adult years, I got to travel, I got to see more artworks from different countries. For example, when I was in Paris, of course, you had to look at the Impressionist movement that was born there. So I saw the way coloring would be different. And of course, color is also something influenced by the times. For example, there's a predominance of blue in certain eras. Um, I was taking all these in, and at the same time trying to create my art out of my own context. You know, what was available to me materials wise, and what I wanted to do mood wise. So I follow my moods a lot in expressing my styles. I'm fascinated by themes of decadence, consumerism, vice, and I think this will all be evident in my exhibit this time, my collection this time. But other than that, my gallery owner told me this, that there's a certain sense of social realism to my paintings, something I haven't really profoundly thought of, but if it appears that way, then I'm happy. But in a sense, I agree with her because I do depict everyday scenes of everyday life, and I like depicting scenes where that are relatable to me at least. Because, for example, I have a desk job, and every day it's that. And then after, you tend to unwind, you tend to drink, you consume, you shop online. So all these little facets of life that we take for granted, I like painting those things. So I like painting people in their element, for my mood. And I try not to overthink ideas. So every time I have an idea for a painting, I just go ahead and do it. And it unravels quite interestingly, because what really helps me flesh it out are the colors that I will use. So I'm very adventurous with my colors, and um, there's really no limit to the color combinations I would use. Even the techniques they teach you in, let's say, art school or art tutorials about coloring or shading, or um, which color goes well with what as a shadow, as a main object color. I throw all those things out the window and just color very freely. And I think in coloring, and doing my strokes, like that's when my subconscious feel of the painting comes out. It's not as deep as that, but that's really the process. You know, it's very internalized, but at the same time, it's very adventurous. The materials available to me are usually oil and watercolor is quite easy to take up because you can take it anywhere. So when the mood hits me to paint, for example, there was a time I was teaching French in a language school, and in between classes, and I have nothing to do, like I would just take my watercolor pad to work and try to come up with something in between. It's so easy to get in the groove when you're doing watercolor because it's easy to set up. Whereas with oil, you have this huge canvas that you have to position. Then you kind of have to have space around you to move about. So yeah, initially the materials available to you and the convenience of painting, those all play a role in how I can finish it or how I get started. So yes, I am drawn by everyday scenes, normal life. It's like a social realism of the normal. This isn't something overly intentional on my part. So in depicting the lives of people like me, workers, middle-class workers who go home and just to relax, just to unwind and to take the day off, they would drink, consume vice, or go on Instagram and consume ASMR videos. These are all, lifestyle factors that we take for granted. And in depicting those scenes, I feel like there's a bigger picture playing about, a bigger systemic force. Like, why do we consume so much? Is this all there is to it? This life? Is there kind of like a middle class intellectual poverty in everything we do on the daily? That theme fascinates me because it's something taken for granted. We don't really question on the daily how we live and whether or not our environment here in Manila plays an influence in that, plays a role in that. But I guess my paintings tend to do that. So consumerism, decadence, vice, those are all symptoms of something bigger happening in our society. Right? Painting for me is less a therapy than a need to detach because it's such a solitary activity. It's something that's clearly polarized from the other things I do in life. For example, during the day, I'm a worker. I am required to engage with fellow workers. It's a desk job. I'm required to engage online. But painting allows me to cut all that off and just be alone and make my own decisions with regard to my output. And that is something that I find relief in, that I'm the boss of the outcome in this undertaking. My initial challenge was time because painting, art is not something I do like on a regular basis. It's not from where I earn my keep. So there are other things to prioritize, like my job. At a certain point, I was doing graduate studies, which had nothing to do with art. So I had to pay attention to other areas of my life. And there are really times when art fell by the wayside. Even if it's my form of relaxation, there are days when I really don't have energy to pick it up. So that's an initial challenge because the bigger challenge really is to create and to create consistently. And that's what I want to do because artists are not really known for a single work, but a body of work. And the challenge is that every time I get an occasion to paint, it doesn't always come out the way I expect it. So I think I have more bad paintings than good paintings, or at least paintings that I deem worthy of exhibition, such as this one. And the challenge is really overcoming that mental obstacle. It's getting that confidence in yourself as an artist that you could paint and do more. Because sometimes you could be faced with a blank canvas and not know what to do with it. It happens. Those are the usual challenges. I've been influenced by many perspectives about art. I have certainly outgrown hard and fast techniques. For example, there are more old school instructors who would insist on a certain way of doing things. I am no longer hung up on those concepts. So I am freer now that I'm an adult. I have more agency when it comes to choosing how I would do my art, and even the subjects and themes I approach. That's all me. I am, I feel like I can assert myself now as an artist than before. When you are young, of course, you are still impressed by certain ways of doing things. Um, you think still lifes are supposed to be just realistic, or you think certain themes are more marketable than others. Now, I think I am proud to say that my evolution has moved past those complexes. I still can't believe my luck, to be honest, because I was expecting to be rejected by so many galleries before I land an exhibit. But the first time I proposed this to attorney Divina Pedron, who owns the Good Art Gallery, she was instantly enthusiastic, and I couldn't be more thankful for her reaction. So it was actually my sister who introduced me to attorney Divina Pedron, and until now, I am thankful for that connection. I know how hard it is to kind of penetrate the artistic circles in Metro Manila, because there's just so much talent out there. And as much as there are many prestigious galleries, space is also a constraint. You cannot exhibit everybody. So I just took my chances, wrote up a proposal, handed it to her, and it worked, and now we're here. So I'm very thankful. It wasn't much of a cold call when it comes to my story with the Good Art Gallery. It really started during the pandemic, and it was probably the first time that I felt my art was going to a greater good, or like would be of service to the public. So during the pandemic, the Good Art Gallery had a fundraising activity just to kind of help with the pandemic effort, to supply our frontliners with PPEs. The Good Art Gallery had that activity. And to raise funds, they solicited artworks from artists, and I donated one of mine, and actually several of mine, and they got sold, and the proceeds went to the Good Art Gallery's pandemic efforts. So that was really a turning point for me, because I wouldn't really sell my paintings before. I would just get commissions here and there for portraits, but that was the first time I thought that, my art could really amount to something instead of just taking up space in our house. My interpretation of the Last Supper, which I approached with much trepidation, because it's such a sacred subject to approach. But then I had really good intentions doing it, because Catholicism is something inextricable to Filipino identity, and I just wondered what would the Last Supper be like if it took place in the Nayon, or in the provinces here in the Philippines. And I had a friend who was building a new house, and his family was looking for a Last Supper painting. So that was what I proposed, and they really appreciated it. It's kind of like bringing that Filipino sense of religion home, really, in a familiar environment. Which is not to say that I still don't feel awkward, that I no longer feel awkward, approaching religious subjects in my painting. But that was very special, because, at first I was afraid of doing it, but I did it anyway, and it was appreciated. Another painting that's memorable to me is the one that got bought by R&L Liquor Shop. It was also part of the pandemic fundraising effort. It was a depiction of a secret bar here in Manila. Secret bars are very fascinating to me, because, they're not exactly big interior design projects. By their very nature, they're secret. They're known to a certain clique, a certain audience only. And if you look at their interiors, there's really nothing special about secret bars, but it's just in the way they gather people that is kind of intriguing and mysterious. Like, how do they get word around, or what's the culture in secret bars even? So that's something to explore, and I think that sort of mystery I was able to depict in that painting. So I'm here right now at R&L Liquor Shop, and the owner of this shop also owns this painting which I made in 2019. And at the time I titled it Secret Bar. And the owner of the Good Art Gallery, Attorney Divina Pedron, was conducting a fundraising for the pandemic effort to help our frontliners acquire PPEs. So she asked for donations from artists who were affiliated with the gallery to give their paintings. And there were buyers who were very interested, and all the proceeds from the sale of the paintings went to the pandemic effort. So this was the painting I donated to Attorney Divina. I just hope my art contributes to the general mood, whatever people's interests are. For example, I'm in a specialized shop, which is a liquor store, and I'm one of the people who like to kick back at the end of the day and with a beer or two. So I'm really coming from that mindset, from that mood, if you will. So for example, when I visit a liquor shop, or when I'm craving a drink, seeing art like this, seeing that it can be enjoyed in a variety of contexts. At first, I didn't know that Mr. Lawrence, the buyer of my painting, was a liquor shop owner. But when I found out that he owned a liquor shop and it was on display here, I got all the more interested, because it was playing really right into what I wanted to depict in my painting, which was a certain lifestyle, a lifestyle that I'm accustomed to. Of course, it's a very middle-class lifestyle. You could analyze it from that social angle, but it's a lifestyle that some of us need to be able to cope with our workday, with the demands of our job. So that's really what my exhibit is all about. I just want to keep creating art and create it consistently. I don't think of it in terms of, going somewhere. A wider audience would be appreciated, but that's not something you can control. That's not something you can command. To me, like, if one person appreciates my art, then I would have done the job. So, but also I would like to evolve style-wise. I know artists are fixed on an idea, on an idea of their signature style to better market themselves. I don't think of it in terms of that. I do think I have my own sense of style, but I don't mind evolving, taking on a new artistic identity as time goes by. I would certainly take up the challenge of proposing exhibits to other galleries. I tend to compartmentalize my goals. So that's one goal. The ultimate goal really is just to create more art. I have difficulty parting with my paintings, especially commissioned ones. It's kind of like being a surrogate mother, if you will. Like, you carry something in your womb, you birth it, and someone else takes it. It's how do I describe the feeling? It's outright separation anxiety. And right now, I'm still in touch with the new owners of my painting. Plus, there are other questions like, what are my rights to the painting from now on? What are the owner's rights? Those are some of the questions that sometimes play about in my head. But I've learned to relinquish control of my artworks over time, because I know that I will just keep producing more. So I try not to get too attached. I do commissions mostly for private individuals. Most of my clients, for example, if there's someone celebrating a birthday, they would ask me to do portraits. Or they are building a house, they would want a painting to hang in their living room or their salon. When my clients approach me, they already have a firm sense of my style, in terms of color and overall aesthetics. So when they approach me, they really expect those elements to come out, and that's actually very flattering, because I would think that my style and techniques are sort of an acquired taste, but it does appeal to certain clients, so they kind of expect it. But I also balance it with what they expect. For example, in doing portraits, do they expect a classic depiction of the person that's being painted? And most of the time they would give me a free hand, and I'm really thankful. Most of the time they would say, oh, if we wanted a painting that looked exactly like her, then we would have asked for his or her photograph to be taken instead. So the reason they approach an artist for portrait paintings is to leave a subject's character and personality up for interpretation by a stranger. And it's a challenge. It's also an adventurous frame of mind among clients. I don't think AI can actually replace human artists. I have little belief in AI. Sure, it has its practical applications, but I remember reading *Sapiens* by Harari, and he said that there are certain professions that AI could never touch, and these professions are the really creative ones, like painting, creative writing, the like. And I believe that. I agree with that. I believe the human mind can still come up with original ideas that AI can't, no matter how large the language model is. The human mind, I believe, still reigns supreme over AI. And this is why, like in a literal sense, it's a challenge nowadays, or it's a welcome breather nowadays to be able to do artwork on physical mediums. Like, let's say, buy a real canvas, really do it with the mediums available to you, do it manually. That's now an extra layer of novelty, I guess. But of course, I'm not discounting that there's really a lot of great digital art out there, created through iPads, through all these digital instruments. But at the same time, because we are fighting against AI, I just think that there's something more visceral and raw when you approach art now with traditional materials that are deployed manually or physically. Painting foremost allows me to unplug from the digital world where everything happens. Even my work happens online, over the internet. So there's also a lot of mental load associated with digital environments. There are all these voices from different places. Painting allows me to detach from all that because it's such a solitary activity. It's really a breather, technically. And it really departs from the work I do on a daily basis. So it's refreshing. Literally a change of scene, because I am changing the scenery actively. I want them to feel present in a certain mood that's associated with my artwork. It's so hard to conjure an atmosphere digitally. I would say my paintings would be successful if they conjured a certain mood for a viewer, and if they could look at it and relate and feel a certain way, then I would call it a success. It's so hard to do that digitally when you're just looking at photos. Or I guess that kind of lifestyle, that kind of activity works for some. I would really like to put forward the beauty of just looking at the painting physically and not having to comment on it, not having to like on it, just silently appreciate it, internalize what it means for you, if any, or how it makes you feel. I've always thought of the Philippine art scene as something impenetrable because I'm a starting artist. At least, I haven't really formalized my entry into the Filipino art scene. I had once been the intimidated emerging artist, so to speak, because there's so much talent out there. You would also need a certain network to belong to a certain circle of artists. For example, there are those who are graduates of elite art schools from prestigious universities. There's a certain hierarchy to it that no one talks about. Or I guess it's just around and we take it for granted. That intimidated me at first. It's really hard to make it on your own. You do need connections. You do need a stroke of luck, like knowing someone who appreciates your art. You could post all the artwork you like on your Instagram, and still there's no guarantee that the gallery will pick up on your talent and would want to exhibit, would want to bet on you like an artist. So it's really hard work to kind of make it in that inside circle. But at the same time, I know that it's a very rich field out there. The field is packed with So many types of artists. Filipino artists are very talented. To be part of that, to be swept by that wave is already an accomplishment in itself because you learn a lot from your fellow artists. I've been visiting the National Museum of Fine Arts from time to time, and it is that painting I go home to, the Parisian Cafe. Juan Luna had a very colorful life. Even controversial life. And even in his death, that painting remained controversial. And it just spoke to the style and the theme I want to approach in my paintings, which is normal, everyday life. But this time, for an ilustrado like Juan Luna, and historically speaking, the lives of ilustrados are still a mystery to us Filipinos who remain in the motherland, studying their roles in Philippine history, right? So I think their depictions of normal lives when they were abroad are rich sources of how we can view the role of ilustrados in our history. Like, what does it say about the movement towards independence or reform vis-a-vis Spanish colonization at that time? So these are themes that can branch off from a simple painting of a lady inside a Parisian cafe. And that's kind of the discussion that I want to keep going when someone views my paintings. Filipino artists have a rich playground when it comes to themes. First of all, because, for example, if you're based in Manila, or even throughout the islands, where life is a bit more improvised than planned, unlike in other cities or countries abroad, for example, this culture of improvisation from the way which we embody in the everyday life, from the way we commute, like to how we figure out our logistics every day, where we eat every day, how we're going to meet up with friends, or whether we avoid traffic on that day, or whether we brave certain roads. Those improvisations allow for a rich context of exploring certain themes for our artworks, and it will come out as as uniqueness to our culture, which a lot of artists play on. Really, that's why we say like Filipinos are unique, but yeah, we tend to ask ourselves in what sense. And I think this unplanned vibe in the way we live our lives, because we are not zoned or anything. Our cities are not zoned. We are known for Filipino time. We do not stick to schedules. The improvisations lend a richness to thematic exploration. I think I want to tell the story of Manila life in these times where it's actually a diverse, urbanized way of living, because there are all these industries cropping up. Like, for example, the real estate industry is in a boom or a perpetual bubble. There's the BPO industry that engenders certain cultures of consumption. These are all themes that, yes, we look past every day, but they have been the subject of a lot of social science research also. I want to embody all that curiosity for these novelties in Filipino economic and social life through my art. But at the same time, I want my art to be relatable to the people who are within this bubble of the changes that are happening in our country, like whether economic or political. We feel it like in our everyday lives. So no matter how trivial, no matter how common the subject is, I still feel that my paintings would betray a certain sense of social change, and I want to capture that. I would like to invite everyone to my vernissage, to my exhibit on the 20th October at 3 p.m., the Good Art Gallery at Commonwealth, Quezon City.